So let's talk a little bit about syntactic island constraints. And in fact, they involve wh-dependencies. So let's consider this scenario right now. This kitty, very cute, was bought as a present for someone. Great. And Lily, who's this girl right here, thinks this kitty is pretty. Okay, great. Here's something we might want to ask. Who does Lily think the kitty for is pretty? But as you'll notice by the frowny face, we can't ask that. That doesn't feel good, right? Who does Lily think the kitty for is pretty? It's just like, no, you can't do that, right? Instead, we have to ask something like, what does Lily think is pretty, and who does she think it's for? And that's okay, right? But that first one, who does Lily think the kitty for is pretty, is just not doing it, is not all right. What's going on here? Well, one answer is that there's a dependency between the WH word who over here, right? And where it's understood, which is the gap here, which I'm going to signal with this little underscore and then the who, in this case, the WH word. That's where we understand it, right? And that dependency is just not allowed in English. You just can't do it. And one explanation is that the dependency crosses what is structure. It's a syntactic island. You can't get off the island, right? You can't cross the island. It's an island. That's the metaphor. Okay, so that's in fact an example of a subject island. Who does Lily think the kitty for is pretty? And there are many other ones. I'm just going to show you a couple of examples here. So let's consider Jack, who is somewhat tricksy, right? He's a pirate, that's what he does. And he claimed he bought something. So you might want to ask, what did Jack make the claim that he bought, right? But you can't, because it's another island. In fact, it's a complex NP island. So let's consider tricksy Jack, who claimed he bought something, and Elizabeth wondered if he actually did, because he might not have, he only claimed he did, and if so, what it was. Okay, so then we might want to ask something like this. What did Elizabeth wonder whether Jack bought? But we can't, because that's a weather island, right? Now, we have tricksy Jack, and he claimed he bought something. Elizabeth worried that it was something dangerous, because he's a pirate, and who knows what he's going to buy, right? So you might want to ask, what did Elizabeth worry if Jack bought, right? But you can't do that, because that's an adjunct island. And so those are just 4 examples of syntactic islands. And what's important is that it's really not about the length of the dependency, because you might think, well, these are all kind of long, they're kind of further down in the question, maybe it's about the length, and it's not about the length. For example, just to demonstrate this, we can ask, what did Elizabeth think? And that's fine. We can then add Jack in. What did Elizabeth think Jack said? Get longer, right? And hey, we can add Lily in. What did Elizabeth think Jack said Lily saw? I mean, and it kind of gets, a little hard maybe to remember exactly who we're talking about, but it's not bad. In the same way, something like, who does Lily think the kitty for is pretty is bad, right? So that's the difference between syntactic islands and just longer dependencies in general. So something important for our purposes is that high SES adults judge these dependencies, these island crossing dependencies, to be far worse than many others, including others that are very similar except that they don't cross syntactic islands, right? So this is sort of our internalized adult knowledge here. So these judgments are an observable behavior signaling that acquisition of syntactic island knowledge has occurred, right? Like if you have these judgments that these things are like extra bad, then you know something internally about syntactic islands, right? You know that these things are bad because, say, they cross syntactic islands. You've internalized that knowledge. So the judgments are an observable behavior. So the judgments can serve as a target then for successful acquisition. It's an outcome we can measure. Can you get the right judgments for these kinds of island crossing dependencies? Can you get that these are far worse than many others, right? That's the question.